Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Alhamdulillah, I'm so happy that we have a chance to be here today and have our small halaqa. And so we have people online as well as people here in the masjid, alhamdulillah. And we're going to continue today's discussion from our Jummah khutbah. If anybody was here for that or heard that. So we talked about a specific hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. Al-mu'minu la yudagh min juhrin maratain, min juhrin wa'in maratain. The person of faith, the believer or true believer, doesn't get stung from the same nest twice. So it's talking about nests or places where dangerous creatures dwell. So in the desert areas, they would have scorpions and snakes, and of course, wasps and all manner of dangerous critters. And so if you accidentally step in a nest of scorpions or a place where snakes are at and you get bit, that's a mistake. That's a human error. But if then you go and repeat it and do the same thing and step in the same place again, then that's stupidity. That's wrong. And that is contradictory to a true concept of faith or iman. And so people are going to be a little bit confused, like, how does that make me a good person or a good believer or a bad Muslim if I do stupid mistakes? And it's because in Islam, faith or iman, it's not a blind obedience to something, but it's knowledge-based. And as you increase knowledge and you increase actions that are good and beneficial, and then you are decreasing ignorance and you are decreasing harmful activities. And so faith grows and is enhanced. So it's a holistic idea of faith in Islam. While a lot of people think faith means memorizing your catechism or, articles of faith and basically doing what you're told to believe. And so the Prophet, peace be upon him, is telling us, of course, and there are so many examples in the hadith, that in fact, every little thing that you do or say affects you. And so you can't always be doing the wrong thing and saying the wrong thing, and it doesn't affect your faith. And likewise, trying to pursue good increases faith. So there's an idea in especially in Protestantism and in some aspects of Protestantism, in Christianity, that faith is something separate from works. And so you have faith and there are no works involved. Once you have a true faith, that's it. Other people think that doing works equals faith. But the Islamic belief is that faith includes works. It's not something separate from works. And so if I pray or fast or give charity and other kinds of good deeds, good works, but I don't have an ultimate belief in God and trust in God, then that's not faith. And if I believe in God and I feel no compulsion to do anything about it, so I think that I believe in God, but it's okay to be an evil person, I don't try to do anything. It doesn't affect my behavior in any way. So there's no difference between my behavior and the local serial killer or whatever, except I claim that I have faith. That's also probably not a real faith at all. But a real faith, then, it has to be ultimately a trust in God, a belief that God is there and greater than my desires and needs, and that should motivate me. So I should at least make an intention or try to do something about my faith. So if I do things that are wrong, if I have, say, for example, bad habits, those are very hard sometimes to break, but I should feel motivated to try. And the least thing that I would do is feel like I need to ask God to forgive me for that and to help me. And so Islam is coming from the point that there's no separation between faith and daily life. And so our world is notoriously full of dangers, harm, there's pain and suffering, all kinds of things that we don't like. Most human beings want to avoid those difficult things, and they want to achieve something good. They want pleasure, happiness, rest, relaxation. They have things that they want that they like, and they try to avoid bad things. And that's perfectly right and correct. And that's, Islam doesn't try to prevent you from having good things and enjoyment, but it tries to prevent you from having things that will lead to harm for you. Sometimes we're confused and we choose to do things that we think are pleasurable in the short term but actually produce a long-term harm. And so, of course, that's wisdom and discernment in choosing your path in life that will give you pleasure and happiness while avoiding long-term consequences that are bad. And so here the Prophet is telling us that if you have a correct understanding of faith, it doesn't mean you will never have a harm, you will never make a mistake, you will never get bitten. It says that you will learn from those things. You will grow from them. And so once I discover that there are snakes in the grass, I'm careful walking in the grass. And so if I foolishly ignore the causes of suffering and harm in this world, obviously I'm going to increase the bad things that happen to me most likely. And so Islam wants us to increase the good of this world. And we can't eliminate all bad things, but we can try to learn from mistakes and grow. And so whenever we're learning and growing and developing, that's part of faith. If we have the basis of trusting God, knowing Allah, knowing divinity, avoiding deification or veneration of others beside God, and in that case, pursuing good, enlightened by the teachings of Islam, to differentiate between good and evil, and to avoid bad. And that becomes a holistic idea of faith as part of your life journey. So Islam wants us to avoid causes of harm, and it helps us. And one way that our religion helps us in cases of harm is that it's adaptable to different situations. And so this is the idea of a dirar, or harm. And so there's a famous hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, which is like one of the rules in this subject. La darar wa la dirar. There is neither harm nor reciprocating harm. And so if pursuing something that would normally be something I would like to do, pursuing something halal or permitted in Islam, something that gives me pleasure or happiness, but by doing that, I unjustly cause harm to someone else, then it's not allowed for me in Sharia. So I can't say, oh, that's my right. I can do that. So there are things that are your right normally. And so one thing today in our current situation is the mask, nobody likes this thing. So it's my right not to wear the mask. Yes, until you go and you cough on other people and you get them sick because you don't know that you have it and you spread a disease, or you breathe in airborne disease from someone else and you get sick because you're a normally healthy person. And so you might carry it and have very minimal discomfort, but then you carry it home to your relative or neighbor who is a high risk person who could be killed by it. And so in Islam, people in authority in society and have a right to legislate these things to protect the general public from harm. And so while normally we're about freedom of the individual, there are times when your teacher in elementary school taught you that you don't have the right to shout fire in the dark, crowded theater. I think that every school teacher taught us that. But we didn't know we were going to live to a time when people were ignorant of that subject and that they think that freedom of the individual is something absolute and without restriction. That is never the understanding in American history of our Constitution or our universal human rights in Islam and in other concepts of universal human rights. And so in Islam, it's not my right to cause harm to other people. I shouldn't need a police authority or government authority, however. I should use my own mind sometimes and do things to protect other people as well as myself. I'm also a member of society. And as I protect society, I'm a member of the society. So my position is also enhanced. And as I harm society, then my position is harmed. That is logic. But unfortunately, selfish and ignorant individuals don't learn these lessons. And so they spread harm to others in the name of their individual rights. And so just like the person who keeps going back and stepping on the snake's nest or whatever, that person is harming themselves. Yes, but I'll give you an example where it's not my right to go and harm myself in that case. And so in Islam, we believe that you also have responsibility toward yourself to protect yourself, your health, and not to introduce harm, misusing drugs or tobacco, alcohol, things like that that are going to harm you if you use them in a way that they are not supposed to be used or not healthy to be used. But let me give you an example from my own experience. It's related to the idea of over and over again exposing yourself to harm. So all the time, how often do you hear hikers in the mountains or in the desert, stranded, in danger, and so they have to send out the search parties and the helicopters and all that stuff, costs like hundreds of thousands of dollars to go find people. And so that actually had a thing where I used to live in Colorado. You break the rules, you get in trouble, they have to rescue you, then they send you the bill afterwards. Because you do stupid things, like for example, you go skiing in the high altitudes and they have people who purposely go out of the boundaries of this ski area because they want to ski in a natural area which is extremely dangerous. So you go ski there, if you don't kill yourself, they have to send the ski rescue patrol, then they send you the bill afterwards. Where's that? Where is that? In Colorado, the mountains, yeah. So if you stay in the boundaries of the ski areas, which have safety precautions and they have patrols, then of course it's their responsibility to keep you safe. But you break the rules and you go out of those safe areas, now you are responsible. Of course, we're a civilized society, so we're not going to say, well, it's your fault, too bad. They are going to send out the rescue people, and you may or may not ever be able to pay the bill. But still, the idea is that you harm society. For example, if you keep misusing the rescue services and those kind of things, especially in countries where those things are not billed to you. And if you have, say you have complete insurance, but you always misuse it, or in the case of a lot of people in America, for every small cough, they rush to the emergency room, keep the emergency rooms full. Then when people have real serious issues, it's crowded and overused. Or they misuse prescriptions. And we kind of talked about that a little while ago, that people who are in serious pain need pain medications. But because people are misusing them, addicts and criminals, so then everyone suffers because now doctors are not able, as before, to prescribe what is needed sometimes for patients in serious pain. When I was a student also in Mecca, a lot of the students, we were there, all of us coming from different parts of the world. And a lot of them were coming from countries back then. This was a long time ago. This was nearly 40 years ago. So a lot of people, they didn't have a lot of good healthcare in their countries before they came there to Saudi Arabia. And every time somebody would get a sniffle or a sneeze, they would send them to the school clinic, which is free. So thank God, alhamdulillah, they had access to great, excellent medical care. They would come back every day, they would excuse themselves, go to the clinic, come back with a plastic bag full of antibiotics and medication and stuff. And I'm telling people, you realize you've got a virus, you have a cold. They're giving you antibiotics, and if you misuse antibiotics, then they build up resistance. So when people really need antibiotics, it doesn't work. And so when you have a virus, don't use antibiotics. That's for a bacterial infection. So having a cold or even a flu, unless you get a bacterial infection prescribed, you don't need antibiotics. But the school clinic was giving everybody with a sneeze antibiotics. And so sometimes we do things by repeating these harmful behaviors, it harms everyone. And so there are times in Islamic law, in Sharia, that give us flexibility in dealing with areas of harm to the individual and the society. And the number one area we'll talk about tonight, inshallah, is al-ikrah. Ikrah means lack of choice, diminished choices. That is being forced or compelled by a person or by circumstances. And so that's the famous verse in chapter 2 of the Quran, La ikraha fid din. There is no compulsion in religion. So you can't force somebody to convert to your religion. So ikrah comes from karahiyah, which means to hate something or to dislike something. So ikrah is when somebody or something forces you or compels you to do something. And so in Islam, whenever our choices are diminished by circumstances beyond our control, Sharia is flexible and Islam helps us to deal with those circumstances. And this is part of the wisdom, so that Islam is adaptable in different circumstances. And so there's a very famous verse of the Holy Quran. It talks about people who deny faith after they have believed. Man kafara billahi min ba'di imanihi, whoever rejects God after having had faith. Illa man ukriha faqalbuhu mutma'in bil iman, except for that person who is compelled to do so and their heart is full of faith, their heart is at peace with their faith. And this is talking about the person who's being forced to deny their religion. So it's a sin in Islam to deny God, or to deny Islam, or to denounce Islam or the Prophet. But if somebody forces you, like they put the gun to your head, you are allowed to save your life. So Islam doesn't expect you to die and allow someone to kill you. So they say, I'm going to kill you and your family because you're Muslims. And so, of course, historically, they would force you to denounce Islam. They would force you to eat pork or something like that, or to, denounce Islam or things like that, or they would kill you, they would burn you at the stake, and they would torture you and your kids and stuff like that. And so people were allowed to, you don't have to, but you're allowed to save your life, and God knows what's in your heart. And so you are allowed to, in emergency, dangerous situations. That doesn't mean somebody is dishonest and deceitful. It's only because somebody is compelling them to do so. And so this verse of the Holy Quran is referring to a specific situation of Ammar ibn Yasir. So Ammar was a slave. His parents, Yasir and Sumayya, were slaves. And they became Muslims in the early time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And their master tried to force them to denounce Islam, and they would not. So they tortured the father first, and they tortured him to death, and he wouldn't renounce Islam. And then they tortured the mom, and likewise, she would not. Then when it got to Ammar's turn, and he had already seen what happened, he denounced Islam. And of course, he felt terrible for that. And this verse of the Holy Quran was revealed in his case, that it was okay for him to do that, because Allah knows that he is full of faith, that he was forced to do that by evil and wicked people. And so in Islam, if things become very dangerous for you, you have options that you can practice your faith and believe in your faith, and you may be able to do something or not do something that you would normally do. And so you are allowed to say words you wouldn't normally say. And so if you said, I denounce Islam, I denounce Prophet Muhammad, because they're going to kill you or your family or something like that, that's allowed for you to do. And then as soon as you're safe and secure, then of course you can return back, and people will understand. Any normal person would understand that why you would do that. You didn't choose to do that. Another famous thing in the Quran are the verses of forbidden foods. So there are many different verses of the Quran that repeat the list of forbidden foods, such as al-mayta wa dam wa lahm al-khinzir, carrion, blood, and pork, for example, and other things which are forbidden to eat. And each time in that verse, it says, except for those who are compelled by necessity, not desiring themselves to eat what is forbidden by God, but because of necessity. So that shows in a time of famine, when your food choices are restricted, or say you're a prisoner and they won't give you something halal to eat. So it's not unusual at all that you would be a prisoner, or you would be a poor person in an institution or something and not be given freedom. And they would force you, if you can either die or you can eat pork. Or you're a person lost, stranded in the wilderness. Once again, our guy out there lost, and the patrol haven't found him yet, and he's got to find something to eat or something to drink. And there are famous examples of people, for example, they would die of thirst and they drink their urine. I don't know what I would do, but no, they say if you are dying of thirst, that you will have no doubt what you would do. And so, of course, normally that's not what you would choose to drink. And so you could imagine a circumstance where the only drink is something alcoholic, or the only food is something forbidden. But the reason that drinks and foods are restricted in Islam is for your health. But it wouldn't help your health if you starve to death or die of thirst. So the first priority is to save your life, save your health, get rescued, and then go back to your preferred diet, inshallah ta'ala, which is the healthy and long-term thing to do. So Islam, number one, doesn't want you to starve to death or go thirsty and die because you don't have a halal or permitted option. But unlike the choice of dying for the sake of your faith or not, you don't have a choice here. You have to save your life. It's not allowed for you to say, I choose to die rather than eat a pork chop, because that's not what it's about. And so there are times in life where you could choose not to save your life. So for example, you have an extremely serious medical condition. There are no good options. One option may be a life-saving surgery, which is extremely risky, dangerous, and if it fails, your life is ended. And while not taking that option may give you more time, but it's a death sentence. So people have choices, and sometimes they have a range of options to make here. And you have the option sometimes to refuse treatment if that treatment is something very extreme and harmful, and you're choosing between different layers of harm and good. And so it's not a clear choice, such as save my life, eat something today and not die. And so it's not a clear choice. But when you have a clear choice, you save your life first, and then later on return to the halal choice. Another area where you don't have a choice is where they say, like, either you you denounce Islam, or I will kill that other person. So you may choose to be a martyr yourself or shaheed and refuse to reject your faith, but you can't do that to kill someone else. So you can save your own life, but you can't say, oh no, go ahead, kill that person. I'm not going to do it. And likewise, they're going to say, choose. Either we're going to shoot you or we're going to shoot that kid over there. So you can't say, go ahead, shoot that kid. You know, say, oh, you shoot that person or else we shoot you. That doesn't give you the right to kill that other person. So those are things where you are not choosing death. They still have the option not to kill you, not to murder you. So you don't have the option to murder someone else to save yourself. So if you say, no, I'm not going to kill that person, but still you better not kill me either, that's wrong, and you shouldn't kill anybody. You know, they're the ones making the choice, right or wrong choice, the evil choice or good choice, not you. But you don't have the right to say, okay, I'm going to save my life. Sorry, brother. You know, and so that's not an option. So Islam gives us flexibility when we are in circumstances which are called ikrah, circumstances of force, where our choices are limited. We are not responsible for matters that are beyond our control. And so Allah Ta'ala forgives us for those things which are out of our control. We're responsible when we have choices and then we knowingly make the evil choice, the wrong choice. Or we have a choice between the lesser of two evils, and we choose the greater of the two rather than the lesser one. And so we have sometimes not an absolute black and white choice, but we have a gray choice and a black, dark, extremely bad choice and a lesser bad choice. And so, of course, while eating a pork chop is a bad choice, dying of starvation is a clearly much worse choice. And so it's part of the wisdom and flexibility of Sharia, so that Islam is adaptable to any circumstance of any person or culture or time or place. And part of our faith is putting it into practice by understanding the higher purposes and goals of living Islam, and then understanding the realm of choices we have so that we can educate ourselves and make the correct choice, inshallah. And so, as we said today, the wise person isn't the person who never makes mistakes. They never get bit, they never get hurt, but they're the person who learn from and then adapt their behavior accordingly. So we make mistakes and then we learn and educate ourselves and develop. And that is a choice of faith, living our faith in a holistic way, involving our life choices in whatever circumstances we may find ourselves. So thank you very much for being here with us this evening. I hope if you're able, you can attend the Wednesday Halaqa after the Maghrib prayer this Wednesday, inshallah, as well as next week, Friday, inshallah. May Allah Almighty bless you and your family and all of our community. Barakallahu fikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.